Woody Flowers to me, right? And my sarcastic side snapped in, and I looked at him. I said, "You're right. We should take our advice from the old guy with the ponytail." And there was a moment where I went, it's like, did I just do that to Woody? And he laughed, and everything was cool, and I was like, all right. So it's I have such a vivid memory of just that brief moment, but lots of cool memories. And speaking of lots of cool memories, we're gonna let Kyle go.
Oh, I have lots of memories of Woody Flowers. And then I apologize if I'm already, can't breathe it out. Woody, when I first was on the field, my son was 1.5 years old, and he had his little, his construction kit. So he would give me his pliers and his wrench, and he'd give me these things, and they from a distance they looked like real tools, but they were plastic. And I used to put them in my back pocket because I promised Troy that I would take him to the tournament, and so I could work on the robot. And Woody would always come up to me and say, "Hey, you've got tools in your back pocket," and I'd pull them out and I'd show him, and it's my plastic tools, and we started laughing. But Woody he would come between the fields, and he'd say, "Kyle, dance with me." And we would dance around on the field, and he'd come jumping over, and he would always do like this little side jump over the field. He was so present in all of our tournaments. But he also, as was already said, he made everyone he spoke to feel like they were the only person in the world. And my oldest son had a situation where he got honored for an award. We went to Washington, D.C., and he was going to do this leadership camp. And I let him know that we were coming in town, and Woody said, "Let's have breakfast." And I'm like, "All right, we'll have breakfast." Oh my God, I'm having breakfast with Woody Flowers. And he sat with my family, and he told stories to my kids. That probably my greatest story was he talked about how he used to want to take the lawnmower and make it into some sort of flying device. And my husband looked at him and said, "So did I." And I'm like, "You guys are weird." Flat out weird, but he always made everyone special. And then when, the number of times he'd come into my pits and he would talk to a student, and he didn't even talk to me. I'd be like, "Hey, Woody, hey, Woody." And he was just present with that student. He was just an absolutely amazing man. And we didn't win chairmans at the time at a first tournament. This is before districts could reapply. It was a one and done, and this was week one. We were certain. We'd already been at national or at Worlds a couple times. By nationals, that's all the time. We had already been to Worlds a couple times. We thought we had it, and we got beat in the very first district. And I got home. I was pretty thrown by it. And I called Woody the next day to talk to him, and I literally cried to him on the phone for 1.5 hours. And he just, I said to someone earlier today, I lived with my mom growing up. When Woody Flowers died, I mourned more than when my own father died, because he was so incredibly special. And he wanted each and every, he would be so proud of all of us today, and all of you, because his legacy is carrying on. And I think that that's something that's very important to me, that we don't let that go away.
That's really beautiful. So Colin has this question. I really like this question because I wanted to ask it at Champs and I didn't get to. FRC has changed so much, basically since all of you started at least. We have the COTS revolution that happened in the 2010s. Being an FRC mentor is just very different now. So in your tenure, how has it changed? How has it stayed the same?
I'm nicer. 28 years ago, I was just raising kids, my own children, and trying to do it all. And, I had to have all my ducks in a row. And now I look at the world differently, much differently, and I look at kids differently, and they are different. So I think in my mind, the mentors have had to change because society has changed. And hopefully we can take the good and keep it with us, instead of going with the bad that is coming out of what's going on in our world.
So I started in '99. It was the first time, as you learned earlier, that we did 2 versus 2. So it used to be, everybody was for themselves. We hadn't figured out gracious professionalism yet. And there was, it was a little more intense in those days, in not in a good way. We're always intense on the field. And so what has changed, and I've said this before, I've been lucky enough to deal with, mentors from other countries, and sometimes there's no common language, but we all have that same look at each other. There's that, and you've all done this, right? You're walking this way, they're walking that way, and they just had a really bad beat, or oh my God, they just got that thing out of the machine shop, and you give that look to each other. And it's a really simple, and in that moment, you're the same, and that's what kills me. Sorry, I've done it with Turkey, the Turkish mentors, because I spent a lot of time in Turkey, and no language at all in common. But man, we're in it for the same exact reason. And that's what's changed. Again, 99, it was a little more about, no, I'm in it for me. I'm trying to win. First is mutated, it's changed, it's evolved in a great way. It used to be about engineers for the United States. Now it's about making better people for the world. And I believe that.
So, going all the way back to even before I was a mentor, my first year at FRC was 2003. We had basically sort of gotten a kitbot back then. There was here's some drills and some plastic helical gears, and if you build it, your robot might drive a couple matches, and then the gearboxes will explode. And then there were no bumpers, so hopefully if you were moving half your matches, you were a solid team. You were good. And so now we've done so much to allow it to be more accessible, and that accessible allows it to grow as big as it has. But the secret sauce of FRC, the adult mentors with experience and with care about their students, like Norm said in his keynote today, working alongside students, solving hard enough problems that the mentors keep coming back because we don't all have the answers, right? The myth of the mentor-built robot is that it doesn't exist because if the mentors all just built a robot, it would be bad because you need 30 people to do this crazy thing that we do because it's incredibly hard, and it's still hard today. There's more information out there, there's more things that you can learn, but you're still working alongside your students, you're still doing that process and competing and trying to do something that's ridiculous for no company would sign up and just be like, yeah, that's what we do. We build our product in 2 months and out the door and ship it and just have to compete with it. That's what we're gonna do. It just doesn't work, but it works here because we can use that student energy and because we have passionate and caring adults who can just push through. And the mentors that mentored me and coached me in high school had that same vision for the world and just making better people because you're able to work together on such a ridiculously hard project.
So I'm the youngest tenured one up here. So the way it stayed the same for me throughout is seeing the passion of adults who are willing to invest time in students. And from a teacher perspective, that's such a valuable opportunity for me to provide my students with something I would never be able to do. So that's the one thing that stayed the same. One thing that's changed is the level of success at the bottom is so much higher than what our first year was around the time probably when shifting transmissions started to be able to be purchased, not DeWalt's.
Not DeWalt, yeah.
Not DeWalt's. And so when I see the level of entrance, so teams can experience a modicum of success, and the number of opportunities to experience that success, and the fact that mentors are willing to go and give up more time during summer and go into multiple tournaments a year. And again, the coach in me knows you only get better because you play more often. And kids have that often, and so I think the FRC mentor change has been a lot of you had to invest a lot more time than you originally thought you were signing up to do.
All right, so we talked about how you're seasoned mentors, and so I'm going to go to what advice do you have for younger mentors? And Adam asks in the specific realm of balancing competitive with, empathy and kindness.
I think it's how you frame success. And I think it starts with, we have our 3 teams in my school. Alan has 2. Our Alpha team is our first year FRC students, freshmen through seniors. And success for them is First robot, one of the first 3 robots inspected at a tournament. It's a simple little thing, but our alpha loves to rub it in 2468's face that they were the first team inspected. And now I have teams in Texas that are trying to beat my teams to be the first one inspected, so I ripped up. But first robot inspected, first 3 robots inspected, scored all 3 phases in every match, don't sit still in a match, win 50% of your matches, win an RP, 50% an extra RP, 50% of your matches, and play Saturday after lunch. That is the definition of success for my team Alpha. It's not about an award. It's not about anything else. And so I think if you're looking at new teams you're trying to help, really truly identifying what is success. And I think with the collaboration tools that we have now that you even heard in the last panel talking about, you don't have to be in the building every day all the time. So I think that is one that you can employ.
I'm going to steal a talk that, or like the phrase, I don't even know, the way that he just describes it from one of our other WFAs who can't be here today, Matt Fagan, our 2021 recipient from the team in Taiwan. And one of the things he talks a lot about is that competing and trying to be your best on the field isn't of itself a generous and kind act, because by you pushing the envelope and you being better, you push everyone else who's trying to beat you to be the best they can possibly be. So both of those things are true. And again, like this, we were in an earlier panel, the whole winning versus learning thing, those things can both coincide together as long as you're coming from a place where you don't want to win in a way that doesn't reflect well on you and your character, that you can't feel good about. You're not trying to cheat, you're not trying to sabotage other robots, you're trying to play the game at an incredibly high level, and if somebody else can push you and they play at a higher level and you end up not quite getting there and you lose by a few points, that's totally fine as long as you tried your best. But if you go out there and you're not trying your best and you go out there and just let someone else win, you didn't push them and you didn't let them figure out exactly how far we can actually take the robots and the tasks and the goals that we all have together. The whole reason we put in months and months of effort to come together for the World Championship at the end and all play with these massive robots on this field and everything. So the competitiveness is generous and is kind because we know that that's what we want from the other side. We don't want them to fold and give up. We don't want to win a match just because they didn't try their hardest and they weren't pushing for it. We want both sides to be going as hard as they can and working to be the best they possibly can be and working together. And if that means loaning them parts, if that means helping them because we know the weird error that has nothing to do with their design, but it's because something happened and we have a way to help fix them to get them ready for the next match, of course we're going to do that. We want them to be playing at their best.
So it's interesting because I was going to also quote Matt. I'm like, is he going to say what I said? Matt said something last year to me and it blew my mind, and I thought I was kind of disappointed I didn't use it this morning in my speech. But he said, if all of us are our own vectors and we're going our own way, we could net zero. But if all of us are going in the same direction, imagine the force that we could have behind that. And so I would say to a new, younger mentor, the most important thing for me is that my team is going in one direction. And if my team is going in one direction, I talked about this morning, go through an ethical review with your team. Find out what's important. Have them all agree to what you're doing and to be prepared for those hard things that are going to happen. And if you can do that, the competition's easier because you're all working together. And if you're fighting within your team because some want to do this and some want to do that, you're not going to hit those high notes. You can't hit those high notes because you need everybody together. So I would even say, slow down a little bit and stop and say, what is the culture of your team? And can you get, because once you're all going in the same direction, the momentum is amazing. And some of you may have had a season where all of a sudden you're really not sure what happened, but like, it was amazing. Everything went together. And that's everybody, everybody's vector is going in one way. Thank you, Matt Fagan.
Oh, You guys covered it. And you'd all be better off if Matt was sitting here, honestly. The guy's amazing.
Matt's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, in the same vein of like advice for new mentors, what's your advice for someone with limited technical knowledge who wants to transition maybe into being more of a technical mentor?
That's easy. Pretend you're a high school student again and just start learning it. I mean, it's really not harder than that. You just say, I want to learn how to code. Let's say, you never coded. So you start with that little programming thing on First Inspires. And then you learn where Chief Delphi is and Reddit. And then you start talking to other programmers on other teams. And you become, this is one of the reasons I think we mentor, to be honest, is because it brings us back to that time where learning was so cool. I mean, I know my audience here. We all kind of dug a lot of stuff in science and math and biology. I know I separated that. Because it was really kind of cool. It was like, wait, you could do that with a triangle? Yeah. And so just I mean, it's not really, I'm not going to give you a detailed, first you're going to do this, and then you're going to take these 4 classes. No, just start doing it. Just literally pick it up, follow the resources that are there, and chase them.
I'm going to steal Norm's thunder from this morning because I'm a math teacher, and I don't build robots. I build teams. My husband is a mechanical engineer, retired, but he is my robot part. I couldn't build, I am the person that has limited technical knowledge. I find people who can help me do that. And as Norm said this morning with 18 mentors, I get professionals to come in and help. I've gone so far as posting on Chief that I needed mentors a couple of years ago, and I have a great mentor, and his wife came in because he used to be a mentor, wanted to get involved again. Now I got 2 for the price of 1 because he got married. Now I get them both. But the point I'm making is that yes, we need to be learning. I totally agree with that, Eric, because I learned so much. But I don't need to know how to build a robot. I have people that come in that can help me, and then.
But this guy wants to know. That's what the question's asking.
So, okay, so one, if you already have the minivan, you're like 50% of the way there. That's you move the robot, move the plywood, it's super useful. 2, part of that is, one, there's so many resources. You're learning alongside your kids, so some of it is just, they have to figure it out, and you can help figure it out first and then teach them, and a lot of times you're sitting next to them at the keyboard and like, I don't know why that doesn't work, let's find out. Second, also just build lots of robots. Like that's the Citrus model of just, we're just gonna build a ton of robots, and that is the best way to get better at building robots, is just to keep doing it over and over again. But yeah, there's nothing that you can't learn. I didn't realize until a couple of days ago that there's never been anyone with an engineering degree who's worked on any Spectrum robot. Like at the time, students have gone on and gotten engineering degrees, but I don't have an engineering degree. None of the current mentors have an engineering degree. So you don't have to have formal engineering education to do this. The resources are there, a ton of it is just experience, and you just do it over and over again, and you realize, hey, it didn't work before. You can learn from all the past robots that existed, all of the build blogs that exist now. There's so many ways that you can learn and to not have to make the mistakes of the past, but sometimes you're just gonna have to make them yourself before you can get that good judgment and be a little bit better at it.
I'm gonna say set your ego aside and ask the strongest kid in the room to teach you. Because when you open yourself up to a kid like that, you just gained a lot of respect from a high school kid. And those kids there, the best teachers in the building. Find the best, strongest kid and go sit with them and ask them the questions and let them tell you. Because they'll tell you the parts you need to know. And this stuff will not be important.
All right, so we're going to dive into the controversial question. Although this way it's worded, it's not that bad. So there's a lot of disagreements on the roles of mentors. So I'm going to kind of expand on this. The first one is like, what are the role of mentors on your teams? Because every team operates differently. And then how do you bring on new mentors and make sure they're meeting your team's definition of like what a mentor does?
So I think part of it is that it's very different to each team, how they want to operate, the communities they're working in, where their students are at, the mentors that they have. Part of our role is if we can get students to do a thing, we will, mostly because I don't want to always be doing the thing. But we also are backups for a lot of things. So if the student can't be there or if something's not working, I at least want to be there to be able to help or have mentors there who can help and guide them whenever we can. And if for some reason we need to step in and do a little bit more to be able to make the entire team as competitive as we need to be until we can get a student up to that level, we will. So there's some years where I program more, there's some years where I CAD more, there's some years where mentors CAD more, program more, or do different parts of mechanisms, where ideally we can have, every year if we could just do nothing and the students can do everything, that'd be great, but sometimes we have students who are awesome at programming, but we don't have a ton of CAD, so we have to do a little bit more. So you end up just filling in the gaps, and as long as the students are getting the inspiration part, right, it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, whether they come out knowing CAD programming or whatever. They can learn it all later if they need to. As long as they're inspired to do something with their lives, if they want to go into STEM or if they want to go into whatever field they think can make an impact on the world and the best place they can serve and use their abilities, that's awesome. And so we'll teach them how to do it as quick as we can. We try to lower the barrier to entry to a ton of stuff to empower the students to do the things as much as they can. But sometimes it is just the mentors having to do it, and that's fine. Like, that's one of the beauties of FRC is you can mix and match and figure it out with your team and what mentors you have, students you have, other teams' resources, whatever you need to do to make your team successful, you can do it in FRC.
So I came from, I 360 and then I went off to Shelton, and then I worked with an existing team, and I remember the first time we started working on something, the then lead mentor came over and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm helping him figure out how to measure this." He says, "Oh, mentors don't touch tools in this room." And I said, "Yeah, we got a problem." And we talked about it. And while I don't believe I completely converted him, I did take his job. And then I moved down to Olympia with another team, and they were similar. They had brought 3 new alumni came back, right? And they all got degrees, and they're all like chomping at the bit. And the older mentors were like, "Well, we're worried they're going to be building the robot for them." And I said, "I saw your robot last year. Let's call this a good thing." But they didn't have enough faith in their alumni. They came in going, "We don't want to build the robot, we don't want to design the robot, but boy, do we want these kids to feel better, to be more successful." So they sat with them, and sometimes, "Hey, I gotta go," and it's like, "All right, I'm gonna spend another 45 minutes on CAD before the adult left," because it needed to be done. Anyway, the expectations is tough when you mix mentors from other teams. There's a whole gamut of what's going to happen there, especially if they're strong personalities. It's just because there is a group that thinks that, well, adults don't touch things, they don't do that. Well, okay, but why? Aren't we trying to inspire? Isn't that the most important letter in the name? So
I think it depends on what season your team is in. Our team started, and our mentors did a lot. And I was not an FRC experience, but I spent a lot of time with them doing things. And as students started to earn the experience more students started to take on that responsibility. And I think, as Alan said, you want to allow them to do it if they can, and it's going to be detrimental to the success of the team. I think it's the responsibility of an adult to help in and guide that. I think there's mentors in here that guide that way from the very beginning of the design to get where you want to. And I know for our team, we're doing more of that because of the time the mentors have to split between the 3 teams. They're much, much more direct in telling them this won't work. You need to experiment with this idea. So I think the season of your team is really critical. And so the expectations of mentors for us, we invite my new mentors to come in and just shadow one of our other mentors and just be in their hip pocket for 2 or 3 weeks to start to have questions of what is this, why are we doing it, and I fully trust my mentors that are there too. They want mentors that want to take on the role like they have.
I agree with everything that they've said. Something we've said way back when was, and way back when Pontiac Central used to win the world championship every year, and we knew how that worked. These were inner city kids that had very, very little and did not know how to do a lot of stuff, and they were provided with great technology. We've always said that first of all, if you have the kids do all the work and then it sits on the field because it doesn't work, it's not very inspiring. But if you can work with them so that they can see it move on the field, that's inspiring. When that first robot moves in the first match, man, they get excited because it's doing what it's supposed to do. And by the end of the season, when they're not only driving that robot, but they're now doing all the pit checks because you've trained them. We treat it like open heart surgery or brain surgery is what we tell them. We will start as the surgeons. Nobody who gets out of med school just opens up a head or a heart, right? They stand along and they are apprentices with those head surgeons. And so our kids will come in, they will work with, they will learn, and then eventually the tools are handed over, and at that point they start taking it. It also depends on what season. If I have a fourth-year student who has really run an entire system by themselves the year before, they're going to have a system their senior year, and it's even going to be less monitored, except for the check-ins that are needed. So it just depends. Now I do want to add one other thing, and that is the role of a drive coach. And I've done this long enough to know that I would never ever want to have a time when mentors are not allowed to be on the field, because I believe very strongly that the mentor is the one that's the role model to help those kids understand how to maintain that conflict that's on there. And I've seen children, young students, sob because they made a mistake on that field. They made the wrong call and their team was angry with them. And I will never do that to my kids. I tell my kids, when we are on the field, the mistakes they make, I will own walking off. And the team doesn't know that they totally screwed up. I will walk off and say, bad call, my fault. Because the kids already know that they made a mistake. They don't need to have the rest of the team know it and hate them for that. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to build our kids up, not tear them down. And so I feel very strongly, if it's not me on that field, whoever the mentor is that's going to replace me is going to be able to handle that conflict in an appropriate way and make sure that they're a role model for all the teams. So, how do we set the expectations for our mentors? It's kind of like a fire hose. And then we have a book that we have created, it's a chapter of the toolkit that we've created that just says what are our systems, what are our protocols. And we also try really hard, and I know this has been mentioned in a few of the speaking sessions I've heard, we try to really maintain that burnout where every sub-team has at least 2 mentors, because no one mentor can be there 6 days a week or whatever's going, crazy schedules going on, so that there's communication and the kids also learn how to share responsibility. And so that's something that's also very important to us. But we have a little mini session of training our new mentors, and then, like was already said, we try to pair them with someone who can, we call them MITs, mentors in training. First year, you're a MIT. But they're in training because they've never done it. Now, if they've done it before, or they're a coach, or they were a teacher, they already have some of those skill sets down. My youngest son is just now mentoring our team, and he says to me on a daily basis, he says, I don't know what to do with these kids. And I said, I know, and he's only 24, and he told me just before I came out here, he said, I'm the youngest mom, I never had younger siblings, I don't get this whole younger people thing. He said, but I understand the guys. He said, the guys, I understand. Like, I can put my head in where they're at. He said, but I have no clue what you do with girls. Like, these girls are killing me. And we have more girls on our drive team right now than we've ever had. So his mind is blown every day. He looks at me like, help, because he doesn't know what he's doing as a mentor. So working them through that. But he's in mentoring training.
All right, so we have a lot of great questions from the audience. So I'm going to ask if we can try to rapid fire some because we're running out of time. All right, so from Mike, we have who's won 2024 winner that you were excited to see this year besides Norm? And what about their mentorship do you admire?
Lord.
Oh, I said rapid and then I gave you a
Yeah,
hard
I was gonna
question.
make a question that we had to both remember who got.
So maybe think of like qualities you've admired.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I believe Tom from Frog Force won this year, and he fantastic person. We were able to be on their alliance this year, and all the things that they do with outreach and service in their program at Frog Force is unbelievable. And the energy he has is phenomenal.
Okay, great. So do any of you limit students on your team?
No.
No limits.
No, we don't have a cut or anything or an application.
They have to apply. So if they
No,
don't
you guys
apply,
just started whole new
so if they
teams.
don't-
This is very disingenuous.
If they don't apply, they don't make it.
Okay, so we can't help out with this question. Okay, I'm going to summarize this one. How do you guys build relationships with students?
I do it by just being a team member. I approach it that we're all on the same team. I'm not in charge. I was a teacher. It was really hard sometimes because it was like, oh, he's a teacher. No, that's just Stokely here. I'm just a team member. And then it's just natural. They see the other students and then they start accepting that.
Working alongside them over and over again.
I tell them that each and every person on the team has something very unique to give, and it's up to us to find what that unique, wonderful thing is that is there.
I ask them about what they do other than robotics. And then I find out they're bicycle riders or they're skateboarders or they're computer scientists. And we do celebrations in our program. Every team meeting, major team meeting, did somebody win an award or have a major accomplishment, and we celebrate that because of the things that we do that are so varied and broad. So,
Whoever wrote that, if you want to come talk to me, I've got more opinions on this.
All right, what are some concrete ways you know you're making a positive difference as a mentor?
I've married 3 couples. I was the officiant.
the number of kids that keep coming back, and I keep graduating 30 plus seniors, and the last 4 years, the 30 plus seniors, 27 or more have been in the program for 3 plus years.
Yeah, getting to write job application reference letters, getting them graduated, getting to school. We could have a banquet at the end of the year, and some of the outgoing seniors talk about just what the impact that the program had on them, that type of stuff.
Believe it's 80% of my mentors are all alum from our team. That means they've come back. They're drinking the lemonade.
Okay, so we have the concept of like student-led teams. Now I am asking a panel of like esteemed mentors, so it might maybe not be the right people. Are student-led teams realistic? And I'm gonna add on to this, how do you guys empower your students as leaders?
I'm going to answer that first part right away. No. Somebody has to make hotel reservations. Somebody has to talk to the school. Somebody has to manage the budget. There's things that those students do not do. They do not have the capability. They wouldn't exist without some adult that comes accountable for that team. So I'm very passionate about that first part. Opportunities for students and rookie teams for leadership. Nurture the ones that step up. The one that wants to step up, the one that's there before you're there every day, the one's the last one out that's, can I help you put the chairs away? Can I take the trash out? There's the one, there's your dude, that's your leader. They have bought in and they're wanting somebody to invest in them.
We do sub-team captains, and we do any type of leadership positions we can. So we have off-season captains, we have sub-team captains, and then we have weekly captain meetings so that we address any of the issues, and we nurture them by really helping them through the process. How did you manage this? How did that feel? How would you do it better?
Yeah, I think there are some student teams that kind of exist. They are not sustainable in any way. Like, fully student-led teams are not sustainable. And it's a problem. Like, we've had teams where we're like, you can't be here till you get an adult here. Like, stop this. Like,
Well, they're gone in 4 years.
well, no,
So
we
start all
like
over.
come to events without adults. Like, it's a problem. Like, we're like, hey, call parents. Somebody's got to be here.
All right, let's see. How did it feel winning the Woody Flowers Award?
Somebody said it earlier, imposter syndrome. I claim that in 2016, there was a problem with the voting. However, I'm not giving it back.
For me, this year, it was such a surreal experience of Einstein going on. And it was like Einstein playoffs never happened to me, although my wife and I sat there behind Central Circuit's pits with a row of lights and watched on their TV stand. And it was over, and I was like, it's over. Like, where did this thing go? So it was just an absolute surreal experience for me.
I know. We try to do a pretty good job of selecting people who don't like, who are like, oh yeah, that's definitely me this year. Like, that's would be odd. So like, if halfway through the speech, I was just like, yeah, they didn't do this. Like, it's fine. Like, get ready for this now. And then they're like, oh, they did, okay. And they just were like, yeah, it's not in any way, the realization doesn't hit for a while that it actually happened.
So it's much different for me. Actually, Dirk was invented. My son was about 9 weeks old, and I was holding on to him, and it's the only time I believe that they were scrolling all the names of the nominees. And I was looking up there, I'm like, Joe Johnson, oh my gosh, and Raul, oh my gosh, and all these names are coming up. And I was like, no way, you know, and I'm just talking to Kobe, and then all of a sudden they say, and the winner is Kyle Hughes. And I was like, and I was at the top of the stadium, so I handed Cody over and I waddled my way down to the stage. Woody and Dean both greeted me. They let me say something. I think I'm the only one that's ever gotten the mic afterward. They remind me of this all the time. And I remember saying something. But see, back then it was so different. This was the last thing at the last possible time. But we had the party in Orlando at the park. So everywhere I went, Cody had this little stroller, and everybody knew the stroller. Well, my kids who wrote the essay that night, we went into Epcot to the party, and they literally were walking in front of the stroller, and they were like, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, and they parted the way, and people were like, that's that lady. And honestly, that was the end of it. At the end of the night, it was over, because we didn't have the Woody Flowers group like we have now. Maybe 2 people said something to me the next year, and it wasn't until really after Baker won that we started meeting and people started saying, oh, you're a Woody Flowers award winner. And I was like, yeah, that was a long time ago.
After going to the conference, I'll say one more thing. After going to the conference this summer at headquarters, I left knowing that the people that are the Woody Flowers award winners feel a greater responsibility to you than we did before, because we are the voice of you, and I feel like First Headquarters feels like they have a conduit to you through the Woody Flowers Award. And so I feel, for me personally, I felt a great accountability to you as mentors and responsibility to do what is right for you.
All right, thank you everyone so much for your questions. I don't want to run over. Let's give a big round of applause to our Woody Flowers.